Good evening. Well, the 49ers had some news today. It wasn't major news, but I think it still was news that really underlines and underscores a potential issue for this team, something that the 49ers are really going to have to address over the next couple months before the start of the 2021 season. Jordan Willis, the 49ers defensive end who they acquired from the Jets last season to be a depth piece along the edge and who defensive line coach Chris Kocurek likes a lot as a developmental piece that the 49ers are really hoping would settle into his role this season. Jordan Willis has been suspended for 6 games for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing drug policy. So an already tenuous 49ers depth situation at the edge rusher spot has become even more sketchy. Now, we have to zoom out and provide real perspective here. As the edge rushing pieces go, so goes the 49ers defense. This goes back all the way to 2017 when Kyle Shanahan first took over and Robert Saleh was still the defensive coordinator. The 49ers had to bring in Elvis Dumervil, who obviously was a Pro Bowl type edge rusher in his prime, but Elvis Dumervil was way on the wrong side of 30 in the 2017 season, and he was obviously their best edge rusher. Had 6 sacks. It was a nice campaign for a guy who was in his mid-30s, but the 49ers just didn't have firepower off the edge. And because of that, a rather schematically sound defense otherwise just didn't have the punch to it to get the job done. Fast forward into 2018, no more Elvis Dumervil. The 49ers' top edge rusher is who? Cassius Marsh. That was probably Cassius Marsh in 2018. Needless to say, that defense also leaked oil throughout the entire season. You look schematically, yeah, there were some blown coverages from the safeties. Richard Sherman had come in and he was trying to be that tutor for the secondary to make things better. But at the end of the day, the defense had no chance, despite, the burgeoning emergence of Fred Warner as the middle linebacker in 2018, despite the fact that they had DeForest Buckner making noise from the defensive tackle position, despite the fact that Eric Armstead had a good 2018 season, the 49ers defense just did not have a chance when they struggled from the edge. They didn't have the talent there when Cassius Marsh, no offense to him, when Cassius Marsh was their best player. Cassius Marsh is a rotational edge guy. He shouldn't be, and he can't be, your premium A-level firepower if you want your defense to be a premium A-level defense. So what did the 49ers do entering the 2019 season that completely reversed their fortunes and transformed them from one of the league's worst defenses into one of the league's 2 best defenses? Well, they spent a 2nd overall pick on Nick Bosa, and they also traded for Dee Ford. And as much as you can criticize the Dee Ford trade because of his lack of availability and all the injuries issues, he was actually healthy and very healthy for over the first half of that 2019 season. And he bookended the 49ers defensive line with Nick Bosa on one edge and Dee Ford on the other edge. And you saw what that did to this defense. Immediately, it was supercharged. Immediately, the secondary stopped worrying about things. Immediately, Fred Warner was playing at a Pro Bowl level. All of a sudden, the 49ers were the number 2 defense behind only the Patriots in terms of the advanced analytics in all football. And all of a sudden, the 49ers were Super Bowl contenders. They won the NFC Championship behind a supercharged edge rush. And even within that 2019 season, you saw the importance of the players on the edge. Nick Bosa and Dee Ford were both healthy throughout that first half of the season, and the 49ers averaged a league-high 4+ sacks per game. In the second half of the season, when Dee Ford was hurt and on the shelf, and Nick Bosa was also dealing with some more minor ailments, the 49ers dropped precipitously to only 1 sack per game. So, just by that rough statistic, and I know that sacks aren't the be-all, end-all, but just by that one rough statistic, the 49ers pass rush was 4 times worse without proper dual bookending edge production than it was when it had it. Obviously, Dee Ford came back during the playoffs. 49ers went back into supercharged mode for their pass rush against the Vikings and against the Packers, and we saw the value of edge rushers in this 4-3 49ers scheme. The Super Bowl hit, and I thought the 49ers were mighty impressive through 3+ quarters. Dee Ford, I think he wasn't fully healthy in that game against the Chiefs. Bosa was absolutely awesome. Again, underscoring the importance of the position. And the 49ers nearly won that Super Bowl. You could very easily argue they were a play away from winning that Super Bowl, maybe a hold away from winning that Super Bowl, right? When Nick Bosa was there working against left tackle on 3rd and 15. I'm sure we don't have to belabor the details, but the problem wasn't the pass rush in the Super Bowl. It wasn't, and that is just a larger 49ers theme from the past 4 seasons. Whenever that edge rush has been there, this defense has been fine. In 2020, Nick Bosa tore his ACL. D Ford only played a tiny bit of week 1, and then we didn't see him again. So again, you had the same issue as 2018 when the edge rushers disappeared. Thankfully, for the 49ers' sake, they found, they got really lucky that they discovered Kerry Hyder. They couldn't afford to keep Kerry Hyder, though, and he's now with Seattle. And even if they had been able to keep him, the defensive line wasn't overpowering with Kerry Hyder. He kept it afloat, and he allowed that defense to be better than the 2018 and the 2017 versions. But if you want the 49ers to really cook, to really be in business, they need more than 2 things. They need more than just Nick Bosa. They need more than a healthy D Ford or Sansom Ebukam or whoever is that bookending edge rusher. They also need edge depth. Edge depth was supplied during the glory parts of that 2019 season by a guy that you might remember. His name was Ronald Blair. And there were other players too. You had DeMontre Moore swing through. Eric Armstead flexes out to the edge, but I don't consider Eric Armstead a pure edge rusher. But you need the top horses. You need your top guns. And that's Nick Bosa, and that's D Ford, and obviously Ebukam with the 49ers signed this offseason. But you also need the guys that come after that. And that's who the 49ers were hoping that Jordan Willis would be. And maybe Jordan Willis still will become what the 49ers need in terms of edge depth in this season. The problem is because he violated the NFL's performance-enhancing substance abuse policy, then the 49ers won't have him for at least the first 6 games of the season. Willis is going to be able to practice with the team during training camp. He'll be able to play in preseason games, but he just won't be available for those first 6 games of the year. Sometimes you could view this from a team-wide perspective as a blessing in disguise because maybe he'll be able to come in week 7 with a fresh body, having not played in those first 6 games. But at the end of the day, it's just not a good situation because Jordan Willis loses the money. This is a without pay kind of suspension. And now the 49ers are going to be left scrambling to figure out what that edge depth situation is. This is the part of the YouTube Live that I share my screen because we need to take a look at the depth chart. So here you go. Let's see. I'm going to zoom in on it once again so that everybody can be able to read this on their screens back at home. But if you just take a quick look and you look down here in the green before I zoom in, I only have 52 players on my 49ers 53-man roster projection. And we will get into the reason why as soon as we zoom in on the defensive line. So we're going to start by looking at the top depth and the top rotation. If all goes as planned for the 49ers, shows that Nick Bosa will be at one defensive end spot, the one that I call the 5 technique spot. And Sansom Ebukam is going to be your starter projected at the other defensive end spot, which I call the Leo spot. Some people call the 9 technique. It's further out. The higher the number of technique, the further out on the line that guy plays. So the 49ers signed Sansom Ebukam, who was a situational edge rusher for the LA Rams over the past 4 years. But they paid him enough money to expect him to do, more stuff than just situational stuff for them. And that's going to be an issue for the 49ers. It's going to be a question that needs to be answered in this 2021 season. Back to him in a second. The interior looks nice, especially on the front line. Eric Armstead, DJ Jones, Javon Kinlaw, Zach Kerr. Oh, boy. This guy was a good player for Carolina last year. Good-looking defensive tackle the 49ers picked up. Maurice Hurst was a good player for the Raiders, another good-looking defensive tackle 49ers picked up. And Kevin Givens, who the 49ers are extremely excited about, rounds out really a 6-person crew on the interior that even, in my opinion, will push Kentavious Street, if nobody gets hurt, off of the 53-man roster. So the 49ers are very, very deep on the interior, deeper than they've ever been in the Shanahan era, and that's even including the teams that featured DeForest Buckner. But you look at the edges, and they're not quite as deep. And there's questions even on the front lines. Nick Bosa is coming off an ACL tear. Will he be 100%? I think Nick Bosa is a special athlete, and I think special athletes come back quicker from injuries and are able to come back 100% more than your ordinary Joe. And I think the 49ers are really counting on that from Nick Bosa, but it's still a question. Samson Ebukam, yes, he was productive. He was durable for the Rams. I mean, here's a guy who's played 70 out of 70 possible NFL games over the course of his career. There must be something in the water over there in Eastern Washington, because Kendrick Bourne, who was Samson Ebukam's teammate in college, and they play on a red field over there in Cheney, Washington. Kendrick Bourne, he also didn't miss a single game due to injury over his first 4 years in the NFL. So Samson Ebukam and Kendrick Bourne, maybe it's that red field. I don't know what it was in college. Both of those guys are very durable. 49ers are happy to have Ebukam, but he's only been a situational guy to this point of his career. So can he come there and pull all the weight for the 49ers? We'll see, because there are only questions past Samson Ebukam, which means that there are only questions in the 49ers edge rushing room. Arden Key, who right now I have listed as the 49ers' first level of Leo depth, he wasn't good with the Raiders. He was a highly touted pass rusher coming out of LSU in the 2018 NFL draft. And he had something like 20 sacks at LSU over his career. So Arden Key was a monster at LSU, had a nice speed rushing move. There was some hope for him to really produce in the NFL, and he was a third-round draft pick of the Raiders. But Arden Key has not really produced in the NFL. So what the 49ers are banking on, because they did give Arden Key some guaranteed money, is they're banking on Chris Kasarik, the defensive line coach, who obviously worked wonders with Kerry Hyder last year, to work wonders with Arden Key. It's still a question, though. Let's move over further to the right. On the right side of this line are guys that I don't project to make the initial 53-man roster. Dee Ford is a player you're probably already asking about right now, because I've been talking about Dee Ford. When the 49ers are in their idealized state along the defensive line, you have Nick Bosa, you have Dee Ford, and you're roaring off of the edges to deliver what they delivered in 2019. Well, Dee Ford right now, it's probably the biggest question mark on this 49ers roster. Fought through a back injury throughout all of the 2019 season. It looked at a certain point, there were rumors that he would retire. That never made any sense, because he was guaranteed $11.6 million if he were injured in this 2021 season. So Dee Ford instead has been rehabbing, trying to work his way back. There was skepticism about his efforts, but I think that skepticism about his efforts should have been erased by the restructure that he executed for his contract with the 49ers earlier this offseason. That $11.6 million injury guarantee didn't just go away. Dee Ford is still owed that money because he wasn't able to pass the physical by the time that guarantee kicked in on, I think it was April 1st. But Dee Ford was willing to move $4 million of those dollars back a season to 2022. He was able to say, hey, I don't need all this money right now, even though you guys technically owe it to me. I'm willing to take one for the team because I'm working hard to get back to health. You can pay me roughly half of it, a little less than half of it later in 2022. I'll restructure my contract. I'll come to play ball. You can include some new incentives in my restructured deal. And those incentives are there. And according to what I've heard, they're similar numbers to reach as Dee Ford's Pro Bowl season with Kansas City in 2018. So that'd mean like 14 sacks or something like that. But Dee Ford came to the negotiating table, the 49ers, when he didn't have to. And he said, let's play ball. Let's see what I can do in this 2021 season. So the 49ers are optimistic that he'll be ready to play. But I still have him listed in red here as a physically unable to perform designation, the PUP list at the start of the season, just because until I see it, I won't believe it for week one. You know, maybe Dee Ford shocks everybody. He's out on the field. He's roaring around the edge along with Nick Bosa also coming back from injury. And all these problems will be in the rearview mirror for the 49ers. But I try to make reasonable projections. And for now, I think that Dee Ford will contribute at some point during the 2021 season. But I certainly don't know at what level he will contribute. And I certainly cannot project him to be on that 53-man roster to start the season. So I have Dee Ford here, and then I have Jordan Willis in Brown because obviously he is suspended and he won't be available for those first 6 weeks. Previously, I had Jordan Willis in this slot right after Nick Bosa. So previously, the 49ers at least had some depth. And the crazy thing is that Jordan Willis might have been the most, out of all the guys that I listed at the edge, because of Nick Bosa's ACL tear, because of Ebukam's past life with the Rams as a situational guy, because of the questions surrounding Arden Key and D Ford, Jordan Willis was the guy that at least you knew what you probably were going to get. And it wasn't going to be an 8-sack guy. It'd probably be a 3 or 4-sack guy for the 49ers. But at least they'd have that depth in this spot that I've highlighted. Right now, they don't have it with Jordan Willis, and they need it. They can't just go into the regular season with only 3 edge rushers. It just won't work. So will Alex Barrett take that spot? He's a guy that's been waived and brought back, waived and brought back. The 49ers have treated Alex Barrett like a yo-yo. I'm not convinced that, he is a 2021 49ers caliber edge rusher. The 2017 and 2018 teams and even the 2020 teams had a lot of those types of guys rotating in through the defensive end spot. But when the 49ers have a healthy quarterback, as they will this season, they'll have 2 healthy quarterbacks that I think are very capable of playing. It's before we even get to Josh Rosen. Who knows what's going to happen with him. But when they're set at that quarterback position, this team is gunning and should gun for a Super Bowl title, or at least a division title, at least to make noise in the playoffs. And you usually just can't get away with having no names at those edge rushing positions, even at the depth spots, especially if you're built the way the 49ers are and your defense goes along with how its edge rushers go, as I illustrated at the top of the show. So maybe Alex Barrett shocks everybody. Maybe he makes huge strides, and we could put Alex Barrett in this spot behind Nick Bosa, and the 49ers will be fine moving forward. The problem is, you're asking for, something not unprecedented, but something very unlikely in that case. And then you're also just dealing with question after question after question at the edge rushing spot. And the 49ers, yes, they can flex Eric Armstead out there. They are best when Eric Armstead doesn't have to flex out there, when they could rotate this powerful cadre of guys on the interior through those defensive tackle spots and have those guys abuse the offensive lines, interior offensive lines from the inside. So you're best when you've got your edge specialists on the outside. So, okay, cross your fingers that Nick Bosa is going to be fine. Cross your fingers that Samson Ebukam will handle the load well. Cross your fingers that Arden Key is going to learn from Chris Kasarik. Cross your fingers that D Ford is going to come back roaring from his injury. And cross your fingers that Jordan Willis will be fine after his 6-game suspension. I've lost fingers to cross right now. That's a lot of finger crossing to do. And usually when there are so many questions, you don't win the bet. That's why parlays in Las Vegas don't do very well generally, right? You have to get a certain level of luck and that's a lot of luck, for a parlay to hit 6 out of 6. The good news for the 49ers is they don't need a 6-person parlay to hit here. I think if 3 of those things that I just listed pan out for them, with Nick Bosa being one of them, obviously, and Ebukam being the other, maybe Ford being the other, or maybe Key, but whatever combination you want. If you get 3 of those things to hit, I think they could have a good defensive line. But to be great, they're going to need their Jordan Willises. They're going to need all those puzzle pieces to fit in where they should fit in, so that way this line could come with wave after wave after wave. Just put on game tape from the 2019 season to see what I mean. This 49ers defensive line overwhelmed people. They are not really in position right now to overwhelm people. So that brings me to the free agent market. Is there a potential solution on the free agent market? Well, we have to go down to the salary cap here. Open it up. There we go. This is the 49ers 53-man salary cap situation. This is the defensive line. I haven't removed Jordan Willis yet. I'm going to have to put him on a list down a little bit lower. But the 49ers are still going to owe him some money. They're going to owe him a little bit less because he's not going to be paid for those first 6 weeks. But that will only come back as a credit. The point here is, though, that the 49ers need that one extra depth piece if Alex Barrett's not going to do the job, and we're wondering who it's going to be. Well, with only $4.5 million of salary cap space against the 53-man roster, it's not going to be a big name that is in his prime. Now, it might be a big name who is past his prime. a lot of people like to talk about Melvin Ingram. Melvin Ingram is coming off a knee injury in a season in which he didn't have any sacks, which is his first such year in his career. It was definitely the low point for Melvin Ingram with the Chargers in 2020. That being said, maybe that lack of production for the former Pro Bowler will allow the 49ers to add him at the veteran salary exception. And the veteran salary exception means veteran minimum, but only an $850,000 cap hit. I have a feeling that a player of Melvin Ingram's pedigree is waiting it out, and he's saying, I'm going to wait for an opportunity that pays me at least $3 million a year, not only 1.075 or whatever the veteran minimum is. But you have to mention it, right? You have to explore it. So I wonder if the 49ers will bring in a Melvin Ingram for a workout, or if they've heard from other teams who have brought Melvin Ingram in for workouts and not signed him, that Ingram wants more money. Because if you look at this right there, the $4.47 million in cap space that I projected for the 49ers to have, they cannot fit anybody who's going to be asking for more money than the veteran salary exception. They would have to do crazy restructuring, all this and all that. And hey, the other day, I wrote about Fred Warner's potential contract. This $4.47 million is before the 49ers even extend Fred Warner. So there are other edge guys like Justin Houston out there, guys on the wrong side of 30 who might be available to be had at discounts, but I don't know if they'll be able to be had at discounts as big as the 49ers will need. So can they restructure contracts? Yes. Maybe that's what it's going to take to bring in one of these edge guys, or maybe they're just going to try to weather the storm and wait till week 7 when Jordan Willis is back and they think that they have a little bit more of a stable there. The issue, though, is that even with Jordan Willis in tow, as I've illustrated over the last 20 minutes, I think the 49ers are still tenuously thin on the outside. So that's a problem to watch with this team. I hope that I've explained it well. It's scary because this 49ers team was built around, and the defense was built around the powerful edge rush. That's what surged them and propelled them to glory in that 2019 season. And I think they're going to have it again if they really want this defense to be the top defense in the league in 2021. Now, the 49ers have diversified their defense. Schematically, they started blitzing more in 2020 when the edge rush disappeared. D'Amico Ryans is now the defensive coordinator. They're going to be playing more press man coverage on the outside. So I think that part of the way that they're schematically changing and evolving will make them less reliant on the edge rush than they were in 2017 through 2019/2020. But I still think that you can't deny its importance. There's a reason why these guys on the edge are paid more than any other defenders in football. And it's because these guys are there to combat the passing game, and they're also athletic enough to combat the perimeter run game. So with Jordan Willis suspended for 6 games, the 49ers just have to be mindful, and I'm sure they are, but I'm doing this to make sure all you are mindful, that edge situation is not as solid as some people might think that it is. That interior situation looks really nice. So if anything, the 49ers can breathe easy because of what they have in terms of a stockpile of talent at defensive tackle. But I still think that there is work to do on those edges, and that's something I'll absolutely be monitoring here over the next several weeks. I'm going to answer a couple questions, and then I'm going to go to dinner. I have a race on Saturday, swimming race, so I am working on being prepared for that. And that means inhaling some calories. Yeah, Melvin Ingram and Justin Houston are still out there, according to Collie Young. I think I addressed that question. What would be awesome is if I go through these questions and I've already answered all of them before looking at them. That would mean I'm getting good at this. If you were calling the shots, who would I sign at the edge? I would sign a guy that could sign at the veteran salary exception and just hope for the best, because that's the problem. You didn't draft a guy for the 49ers. You decided that you were okay with who you had. You thought you could develop Willis and all that. And then when you start to get to these bargain bin kind of additions, they're probably not going to be very good. That's the thing. Kerry Hyder was an exception last season. The 49ers paid him $1.5 million, and he gave him almost 10 sacks. That doesn't happen, every day. So you have to hope that you find somebody at the veteran salary exception who you strike gold with again. And it's a lot easier to strike gold when Chris Kasarik is your defensive line coach. So that's a reason to be optimistic. Yeah, they might have to occasionally rotate Armstead to defensive end. I think if you look at that depth chart that I just showed you, I'm not going to expand my screen again, but you see how loaded the interior is. I think you will, inevitably have to see Eric Armstead play out of the edge more than you would ideally like. And then you hope as you pick up steam midseason, get Jordan Willis back, get that edge rotation really shored up, maybe D Ford back too, Arden Key developed under Kasarik. Then Eric Armstead gets to do his rushing over the inside. That's probably how this is going to end up, because even if you sign a Melvin Ingram at a veteran salary exception, there is no guarantee that this guy is going to be effective. He wasn't effective last year, no sacks. So the 49ers are going to have to rely on what they have, and they're going to have to mix and match what they have. And trust me, it's not going to be as bad as it was last year when you were, literally playing money ball with the defensive line. I wrote an article, Chris Kasarik, money ball in the 49ers defensive line. It's like an island of misfit toys that he was playing with there to move into the 5 technique, the 3 technique, the 1 tech. It was a mess for the 49ers last year. But they still, even without Willis for 6 weeks, they are projected to have a whole lot more to work with than last year. Yeah, Jordan Willis can work out with the 49ers during the suspension period. He just can't play in games. That's a question from Luke Walsh. So that's good. It's just Jordan Willis doesn't get paid for 6 weeks. 49ers don't have him. So it's about surviving those first 6 weeks. If anything, it's not that the Jordan Willis loss for 6 weeks is a season ender. It's that this suspension has encouraged me to dedicate a whole show to this issue, because I've talked about this issue in my articles and different shows, but I've only talked about it for like 5 minutes. This deserves a full 30 minutes. This deserves an article too. I'll probably write one here in the next couple of weeks. This needs to be talked about, and this is not being talked about. I mean, the edge depth, because people just assume, oh, Bosa's coming back, D Ford might come back. No, the edge depth needs to be bolstered. Several things need to go right for the 49ers to be true title contenders. Looks like I answered all the questions. I looked through all the questions, and I think that I addressed them in the show. So we're going to cut this off at about 27 minutes. Anyway, Lombardi himself on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is for fun. I just mainly post personal pictures there, but you can follow me. It's all good. And make sure that you get everybody following the YouTube channel. We're growing. We're nearing those 2,000 subscribers, and I think it's just going to be exponential. The more we get out there, the more we can just have just reasonable classroom talks about the 49ers out here. So tell your friends. The more people that subscribe, the more I'll do these. I kind of need some positive reinforcement. So I'm so happy that so many of you have come aboard so far, and it's time for me to go get dinner. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great Thursday evening. Bye-bye.